about the coronavirus and specifically about the vaccine. And the number one question that I get, which I do not have the answer to yet, but I am hopeful that we will have soon before it becomes relevant for most of the general population, is pregnancy and breastfeeding. And they just haven't released all the data on that yet. So I know that's a really common question. And if you have that question, maybe comment below with a yes, or subscribe if you're on YouTube, so that when I get that information, I will make sure and contact you and let you know that I have that information, because I do not have that information yet. That is the number one question that I get on my text, which, if you have a question, you can text me. It's 402-256-0768, or drop a comment below, and make sure that as we go through this video and I tell you about the mRNA vaccine and how it works and everything like that, that if you have a question, ask. If you aren't a subscriber, subscribe, hit the like button. But I wanted to talk through the vaccine and actually how it works. And we're talking about the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine. They are a new vaccine platform that hasn't been used before, but it's not like the platform didn't exist before coronavirus. It just hadn't been utilized. It's been worked on for actually over 10 years now to figure out how to make it work. They just haven't had the drive or the motivation to make it work so quickly. Previously, they were, attempting to use it with rabies vaccine, and I think with measles and a couple others. But as it turns out, we already have those, and they weren't as time crunch sensitive. So it was actually really nice and fortuitous that uh, they had this new platform. We had the DNA, or the DNA and RNA structure for the sequence for coronavirus in early January. They were able to plug it in and try it, and here we are with a vaccine on the really near horizon, relief in sight, end of light at the end of the tunnel, getting much brighter. And so I just wanted to talk about what this DNA, mRNA, protein, all of those things, how they all work, because I think that is a big point of confusion and there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I just wanted to set the record straight. And I'm going to actually use my Sharpie and do some teaching. So in biology, there is this central dogma, and Dr. George Viamet, if you know him, he was at UNL when I was there, and I was a TA for him. He was my very first biology teacher. He taught Bio 102H, and he taught us he taught us a lot of things, but there were two like foundational things that he taught us. The first was very simply that everything in biology comes down to the concept that plus and minus attract, opposites attract, and plus plus likes repel each other. And basically all of biology comes down to that, from biochemistry to amino acids and proteins and folding structures and so many different things. And basically how the entire world, earth, universe works is positive and negative charges attract each other, positive and positive, negative and negative repel each other. And basically that's how biology works. Close the textbook, go home for the day. But the other thing that he taught us that was the central dogma of biology. So if you Google central dogma, this is exactly what you'll find. DNA leads to RNA, leads to protein. And so this is the central dogma, is that our as humans, our genetic information is in DNA. Our cells take that DNA, the instruction book, and create mini booklets of information called RNA that then get sent to make the protein. And that is how it all works at the end of the day. Is the main instruction book, the big textbook is DNA. I was going to try and grab a textbook. They tear pages, they make copies of the important pages and send them to be made. So imagine you've got a really expensive textbook that has exactly what you want to do. You want to distribute it to the people that are doing the work. You're going to make copies out of that initial textbook so that they can have the relevant information of how to build a chair, or how to teach math, whatever it might be. You're going to take that DNA, you're going to make copies of what you need into RNA, and then that RNA is going to form what we call the proteins, the actual worker bees of all of the cellular processes and things like that. So the way it works in practicalities is that, so we have this central dogma of DNA to RNA to protein, and then we also have in the immunology world, we have protein, which causes immune response, which leads to antibody production, which leads to immunity. So this is how the immune system works. In a nutshell, it's a billion times more complex than this, much more than I understand. But this is the basics that we need to know to understand how this vaccine works. Protein, immune response, antibody production, immunity. That is how the immune system works in a nutshell for foreign invaders. Now, this could be measles, this could be coronavirus, this could be egg protein or peanut butter, peanut protein. Causes an immune response, which generates antibodies, which then leads to immunity. What immunity is next time I see this foreign invader, I'm going to have antibodies at the ready to attack and destroy it. And that can be used for good, as in the case of measles vaccine or chickenpox or pneumococcal vaccine, where we introduce the protein. The protein does not cause the illness. It's not the whole bacteria. It's not the whole virus. It's just a subportion of that, which then generates an immune response, which then creates those antibodies to measles or COVID or whatever it is. And so then when we see the actual foreign invader, we already have immunity, and those antibodies respond to that and then destroy the offending pathogen, and we don't get the illness. And so that's how it works. It can also be used for bad. Protein, peanuts, peanut butter, eggs, kiwi, whatever your child is allergic to. Those get introduced. We have a haywire immune response that then causes the body to recognize peanut protein as foreign. We get antibodies that develop to that. Then we become, in essence, our body thinks it's doing the right thing by saying, well, if we see peanut butter, or the kid eats the Snickers or something like that, we're immune to that. So we're going to create that immune response. That would be a haywire response to that, where the peanut protein now has antibodies against it, which then generate the immune response. You get hives, vomiting, anaphylaxis, those sorts of things. That would be a miswired response, but that is, in essence, how it all works as well. Now, what does the new vaccine do? The new COVID vaccine is an mRNA vaccine. And so what we have is we have the DNA, which maybe I should try and do this with my hand in there. Can you see that? DNA is in the nucleus of the cell, which is like the inside most protected area. DNA sends out, it creates mRNA, which goes out into the cell. It goes out into the cell. So the mRNA is here, and then the mRNA is taken and made into protein. That's just how a normal cellular process works on a regular basis. What we're going to do is, if this is the whole big cell, the vaccine is going to, so we have the COVID vaccine is an mRNA vaccine. It does not get into the nucleus. It does not get into your DNA. I know that there's a lot of misinformation about that, but that from a biological standpoint and from the central dogma standpoint just doesn't fit with biological plausibility. We have the mRNA, which is the COVID spike protein. Pardon my poor handwriting. This mRNA from the vaccine is into the cell. The mRNA is in there, and then this mRNA encodes for the spike protein. So our cellular processes then are going to take that mRNA and make the spike protein. They're not going to make the whole COVID molecule. It's not going to get integrated into your DNA or anything like that. They're going to make that spike protein. So now that spike protein is there, and our body says, whoa, that is not something that we normally see. Let's create an immune response to that. So then what's going to happen is that spike protein is going to generate an antibody response. All right, I'm going to stop drawing on this piece of paper because this is just getting out of hand. From there, our body recognizes the spike protein is foreign and it generates an antibody response. Then when we see real full COVID in the wild, we already have antibodies made to that spike protein. The spike protein is on the outer side of the virus. So as you can imagine, I get sneezed on in the face, or I breathe in and get exposed to coronavirus. Those little virus particles on the outside is that spike protein. My body sees those because it already knows to recognize that spike protein. And then the immune system, my immune system, both the antibodies, the B cells, the T cells, all the complicated parts of it, ramp up, kill that because they're already they already know what it's going to look like, so they're ready for it when it actually shows up. And that's how the virus gets destroyed, and that's how the vaccine works. So going back to the central dogma, it doesn't even touch the DNA, as you can see. It starts at the RNA level. The vaccine you give or you get is an RNA, mRNA, in a phospholipid membrane to keep it safe so that it can get into the cell and not get degraded, because RNA is very flimsy. It's like, the textbook and then the sheet of paper. Like, the sheet of paper doesn't last forever. We keep the textbook for years and years. The sheet of paper we just use, and then once we've read the instructions and created the chair or whatever we're making, we toss those instructions. We can always go back and get another copy if we need. The mRNA gets into the cell. It uses our own cellular machinery to generate those spike proteins. Those spike proteins are recognized by our body as foreign. Our body creates antibodies to stop that from happening because we recognize it as a foreign intruder that shouldn't be there. It doesn't cause all the symptoms because it's just a spike protein. It's not the whole COVID virus that causes all the symptoms that we see. And then we've got those antibodies ready so that when we see coronavirus in the wild and it gets into our nose, eyes, mouth, lungs, wherever, our body already has those antibodies ready. They say, oh my gosh, I see that spike protein. I know that because I've seen it before. They attack it, they destroy it. We don't get coronavirus causing the infection. We don't get COVID. We don't get all of the ramifications as that. So in essence, that's how it works. And hopefully this has been helpful. If it was, click the like button below. If it was helpful, would you take a moment and just hit the share button so that we can educate and inform other people? And Dr. George Viamet deserves all the thanks because he taught me the central dogma, which then I had repeated like a billion times over, as to how this actually works. And there's a million sub steps in here, but from a high level, this still applies and is exactly what we need to know. So to reiterate one last time, the vaccine is an RNA messenger piece. It gets into the cell. It uses the cellular machinery to create those spike proteins. Those spike proteins are not coronavirus in and of itself, the whole thing, so we don't get the infection from it, but we do get antibodies because our body recognizes that spike protein is foreign and it creates antibodies. Then when we see actual coronavirus in the wild, our body is ready for it. And that's how the vaccine works. That's how the platform works. It's really exciting to have this new vaccine platform. I've done other videos which you can watch about vaccine side effects in general, and I'll have another video coming out soon about the specifics of the vaccine, the coronavirus vaccine, the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, and their side effects as we learn more in the coming days. If you would like to make sure that you don't miss that, hit the subscribe button. Please share. Please keep up the good work and have hope, because this is really going to be a way for us to move through. This is really the beginning of the end of this whole pandemic thing. And so I'm really excited for it. And I hope you are too. And I hope that makes sense. Drop any questions below. Text me 402-256-0768. Keep up the good work.